Take a deep breath. Slow down. Let your shoulders fall. Let your chest release some of the tightness it has been holding. If a name quietly crossed your mind just now, it is not by accident. Someone who once walked away is thinking about you tonight. Not casually, not by chance. It's not a fleeting memory or a passing thought. It's something heavier, something that has been quietly growing in the spaces they didn't understand, in the distance they thought would protect them from what they left behind. Some connections don't truly end. They don't disappear in a dramatic way or vanish with a single word. They linger. They whisper through memory, through feelings that refuse to die, through moments that hit you when you least expect them. And tonight, that whisper has grown loud enough that it can no longer remain silent. Tonight, that silence is about to break. It begins subtly, a feeling in the air you can't quite place, a heaviness you tell yourself is nothing, but you feel it in your chest, in your pulse, in the way your thoughts wander towards someone you promised yourself you would stop thinking about. And yet, there it is, their presence. Not in person, not in words, but as a sense, a knowing that someone who left a void is aware of that emptiness tonight. They are awake somewhere, holding their phone, staring at your name, replaying memories that they thought they could erase with distance. You weren't asking for much back then. You weren't demanding more than anyone could give. You simply wanted presence, consistency, effort. And when they left, they didn't see what they were leaving behind. They didn't see the way silence cuts deeper than words ever could. You carried it alone. You questioned yourself. You replayed conversations. You wondered endlessly what you did wrong, when the truth was, you did nothing wrong. They just weren't ready to see what you offered. And now the tables have shifted. Because tonight regret has grown louder than pride. Something inside them has shifted. Something that they ignored, that they silenced, that they walked away from, has begun to gnaw at them. They can no longer pretend that leaving was harmless. They can no longer tell themselves that distance made everything easier. The truth has a weight that even pride cannot hold, and it is pressing against their chest tonight, urging them to pick up the phone, to dial the numbers they thought they could forget, to speak words they should have spoken long ago. They are aware of you again, not as a memory, not as a vague impression, but as a presence that matters. You were not simply someone they left behind. You were the person who grounded them, who listened when no one else did, who gave patience and understanding they never knew how to receive. And tonight, they are aware that absence cannot replace what was never fully appreciated. They realize that their silence caused a fracture, a gap they can no longer ignore. Think about that for a moment. Someone who thought they could walk away, someone who assumed you would always wait, is awake with your name on their mind. They are holding their phone. Their finger hovers over your number. They hesitate. They replay every interaction, every laugh, every argument, every quiet moment you shared, and they know that what they left unresolved is not a mistake that can be ignored any longer. Their pride struggles, but their heart is louder tonight. They wonder how it will be received. Will you answer? Will you still care? Will you even recognize them after the time that has passed? These questions keep them up, twisting in their mind, because this is not a casual call. This is not a message sent out of boredom. This is a confrontation with the truth of what they lost and the reality of what you have become. They are seeing you now not as someone they could take for granted, but as a person who lived through absence, who survived, and who grew stronger while they remained stuck in hesitation. And you may have sensed it, that moment before sleep, when your mind drifts and the name crosses your thoughts. That inexplicable tug, as though a thread from the past is pulling you gently backward. That is not imagination. That is the echo of someone reaching, someone who never fully left, someone whose pride is finally bending under the weight of truth. They remember things they shouldn't have, the small details, the gestures, the little moments that went unnoticed at the time, but now scream in their memory. The way you laughed when it was hard to laugh, the way you forgave when they didn't deserve it, the way you loved in a way that was steady and quiet, not loud or demanding. And that realization shakes them more than any anger or confrontation ever could. They walked away from something real, something unshakable, something that they never deserved. Tonight, they are standing at a crossroads. The phone sits in their hand. Their heart beats faster with each passing second. One choice could bring clarity. One choice could bring pain. One choice could finally release them from the weight of their own mistakes. But the other choice, the choice to remain silent, to cling to pride, to convince themselves that it's too late, feels heavier than ever. Imagine the pause before they make the call. The hesitation, the uncertainty. They rehearse what they might say, knowing every word matters. They hold back tears that weren't allowed before. They clutch the phone as if it contains the power to undo the past. And in that moment, all the time, all the distance, all the walls they built around themselves collapse in awareness. They left something irreplaceable behind. This is the night when regret can no longer wait, when truth can no longer be ignored, when someone who walked away realizes that silence was never neutral, it was destructive, and they are ready to confront it. Not with anger, not with blame, but with words they should have said a long time ago. Words they swallowed because they were too afraid to be vulnerable, too afraid to admit that leaving didn't bring freedom. It brought loneliness, guilt, and longing. And you, whether you know it yet or not, are ready to witness the shift. Not as someone waiting for closure, but as someone who has grown through absence. Someone who understands that love is not about begging or chasing, but about presence, choice, and integrity. The person who left is about to see you not as you were, but as you've become. And that is both frightening and inevitable for them, because tonight is different. There is a tension in the air, a heaviness that signals transformation. The world outside may continue, indifferent and unknowing, but somewhere in that stillness, someone is finally aware of the cost of their choices. They cannot undo the past. They cannot erase the time lost. But they can reach out. They can speak. And what they say, if you choose to listen, will not just change their story, it will illuminate yours. It begins with a breath, a pause, a moment of hesitation before the call. And in that brief second, everything changes. The past doesn't disappear, but it becomes visible in a way that was never possible before. You are no longer waiting in darkness. You are no longer uncertain. You are no longer the person they assumed you would be. You are someone who has survived absence, embraced solitude, and grown stronger in ways they never anticipated. So tonight, take another breath. Feel it. Let it fill your chest. Let it remind you that the story isn't about what they lost. It's about what you found. And if the call comes, it is not to reclaim what was lost, but to reveal truths long buried, to confront the weight of choices made, and to acknowledge the strength you have cultivated in their absence. Because someone who once left is thinking about you tonight. And whether they call or remain silent, the awareness of what they lost and what you became will linger far longer than any words could. This is the moment before everything shifts, before the narrative of their pride and your growth collide, before the night finally reveals its power to transform understanding into clarity, regret into awareness, and silence into acknowledgement. 1. The night they can't ignore you anymore. You didn't notice it at first, but tonight something feels off. They've tried to distract themselves, scrolling, talking, staying busy. But none of it worked, because when the world finally went quiet, you came back into their mind, not as a memory, but as a feeling. They're sitting there right now holding their phone, staring at the screen longer than they should. Your name is still saved the same way. Your number is still there, untouched but never forgotten. You were the one they thought they could walk away from. The one they believed would always be there if they ever needed you again. So they left, without explaining, without closing the door properly, without realizing what silence would cost them, and you carried that silence alone. You questioned yourself. You replayed conversations. You wondered what you did wrong, even when you did nothing at all. But tonight, regret is louder than their pride. Tonight, the distance they created finally feels real. Tonight, they understand something painful. Walking away didn't make them free, it made them lonely. Now they're standing at a crossroads. Press call or live with the regret forever. If they call tonight, it's because the truth inside them can no longer stay quiet. 2. What they've been holding back all this time. If they call, it won't be easy for them to speak. Their voice will hesitate, not because they don't know what to say, but because they know exactly what they should have said long ago. They've been carrying these words for months, maybe years, swallowing them every time they thought, it's too late now. Pride felt safer than honesty. They want to tell you they were wrong. Wrong for leaving without explaining. Wrong for choosing distance instead of communication. Wrong for assuming you'd understand their silence. Here's the truth they're only realizing now. You didn't need silence. You needed reassurance. They replay moments with you in their mind. Your patience, the way you listened, the way you stayed calm even when you were hurting. They see it clearly now. You weren't asking for too much. You were asking for effort. And the hardest part for them is knowing you gave what they didn't know how to return. If they call, expect pauses. Expect imperfect words. Expect emotion they never allowed themselves to feel before. Because this isn't a casual call. It's a confession, a release, a moment where fear finally steps aside for truth. And the question that keeps them awake tonight is this: will you still recognize them now that they finally see you? 3. The moment the call finally comes. If you're still here, understand this. Not everyone is meant to hear this message. This is for the ones who felt something shift inside earlier, because this connection is not ordinary. When the phone finally rings, time doesn't move the same way. Your heart knows before your mind does. There's a pause, that quiet second where everything you buried starts to rise. You look at the screen, and there it is. The name you trained yourself not to expect anymore. Your hand hesitates, not because you don't want to answer, but because answering means reopening something you barely learned how to survive without. You pick up. For a moment, neither of you speaks. You hear their breathing. They hear yours. And in that silence, everything that was never said is suddenly present. Their voice sounds different, softer, careful, like someone who finally understands what they almost lost. They don't start with excuses. They don't pretend nothing happened. They say your name slowly, as if saying it out loud again might hurt. Then they admit it. They ran when things felt real. They didn't know how to stay. They confused distance with control and silence with strength. And here's what shakes them the most. You're not begging anymore. You're not explaining yourself. You're not trying to be understood. You've grown. They hear it in your calm, in the way you don't rush to fill the silence, in the way you're no longer asking them to choose you, and suddenly they realize something painful. This call isn't about getting you back. It's about facing the version of you they never deserved back then. 4. What they realized too late. After the call ends, the silence feels different, not empty, heavy. They sit there staring at the screen, replaying your voice in their mind, not your words. You're calm. That calm unsettles them more than anger ever could, because they expected pain. They expected questions. They expected you to still be waiting right where they left you. But you weren't, and that's when it hits them. You didn't pause your life when they walked away. You felt the pain. You cried when no one saw. You questioned your worth in the quiet. And then, slowly, you healed. They realized something painful and beautiful at the same time. You became stronger without them. That version of you on the phone, that's someone who learned to stand alone. Someone who no longer needs closure to breathe. Someone who doesn't chase what doesn't choose them. And suddenly, they understand the true cost of leaving. Not just losing you, but losing the chance to grow with you. They see now that love isn't a feeling you visit when it's convenient. It's a responsibility, a presence, a choice made daily. And the truth they can't escape tonight is this: you didn't change because you stopped loving. You changed because you learned to love yourself. Some lessons arrive late and stay forever. 5. What the call changes forever. What they don't realize at first is this: the call didn't change you. It changed them. While they were deciding whether to be brave enough to call, you were learning how to live without answers. While they were holding on to pride, you were learning how to let go of hope that hurt. The truth is, the call wasn't meant to bring you back together. It was meant to bring clarity. Clarity that you were never too much. Clarity that your love was real. Clarity that your love was real. Clarity that silence was never your failure. It was their fear. And now, standing on the other side of that conversation, you understand something powerful. You don't need them to choose you anymore. You already did. If they grow, if they show up, if they fight for you, you'll see it clearly. And if they don't, you won't beg, chase, or explain again, because you've crossed a line you can't unlearn. You learned that love should never feel like waiting in the dark. The call didn't reopen your wounds, it closed them. If this story feels familiar, take a slow breath. You're not weak for feeling deeply, you're human. Some people come back to apologize. Some come back to remind us how far we've grown. And some come back too late, not to hurt us, but to free us. If someone from your past crossed your mind while listening, that's okay. You're allowed to remember without returning. You're allowed to feel without reopening doors. Before you leave, write this in the comments: I choose peace over confusion. And if this story touched your heart, stay with me. Subscribe, because the next video might say the words your soul has been waiting to hear. You didn't lose them. You found yourself. Before you leave, write this in the comments: I choose peace over confusion. Not for anyone else, for yourself. And if this story spoke to you, subscribe, because the next video might say the words your soul has been waiting to hear.